There's some indecisiveness in the air. But I promise you, I don't take this lightly. My fantasy draft, it's an important job. I need someone I can trust, and the fantasy footballers are my number one guys. Their ultimate draft kit is the everything I need to get ready for my drafts. Don't dance with the devil in a pale moonlight. Jump on over to www.ultimatedraftkit.com. Without it, you just might be a dead man.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from the FantasyJocks.com studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
We're back. Big show.
Huge.
It's going to be huge. It's huge. Those are awful impressions.
What?
As opposed to this show, which is going to be great.
Before we jump in, I was gonna say I think I've learned like one thing from these. We're getting these, our celebrity friends. Jack Nicholson, thank you.
Oh, sure, yeah.
We appreciate that. And
Jack, I just call him Jack.
Jack and Liam, my good friend Liam, like they're basically inferring if you don't get the ultimate draft kit, you might die.
Right? Yeah, they're very intense.
There's
That's
a theme.
Method. That's a method to the madness. Welcome to the show, Thursday, August 11th. The Fantasy MVP episode, the one episode you absolutely don't want to miss, along with all of our other episodes.
If you're listening, then you're not going to miss it.
But especially this one. So welcome to the show. Andy, Mike, and Jason back again, the Fantasy Footballers. We are very excited about this episode. We have the Fantasy MVP picks, not only from us, but from, I believe, 9 or 10 other experts. We got Jake Ciely, we got Pat Mayo, Chris Harris, John Paulsen. We have Marianne Lee, Adam Aizer.
Lots of people.
Yeah, Matt Harmon,
friends.
JJ Zachariason. So we're going to break down all of their MVP picks for 2016, and they give us their arguments as well. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Very excited to get into that. Want to remind everybody about jointhefoot.com, our fantasy community. If you want to get into a league at footclanleagues.com, head over there. Definitely follow us on Twitter at the FF Ballers. If you're watching us on YouTube, because you can do that, you can go subscribe on YouTube. You'll see we have a Ken Stabler rookie year helmet.
It's unbelievable.
In studio today. So you have to go on there and take a look, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But it is very impressive, and I don't think I'd want to wear it and play right now.
No,
because it looks a little beat up.
That thing has seen some action.
That's a game-worn helmet.
I should have worn it for the combine. I could have ran the 40 in that thing. Maybe I would have. Well.
No spoilers.
No
Andy.
spoilers. All right, you'll get to see it. All right, hey, quick question of the day. I like this one. This one comes in from @ValidChima on Twitter. What do you do when the person picking in front of you steals your pick? Do you stay quiet about it in the draft, or do you let them know?
Oh, you got to let them know. You got to tell them. You got to make them feel good about your pick and make sure everyone else knows that you think it was a good pick because you're super smart.
That's
what you do.
That's actually what I do. I am very boisterous and very loud when someone snakes my pick, and that's the reason why. Because it's a dual ego pump at the same time, where the person in front of you, oh, you're so smart, but you know who else is smart? Me.
But
it's a way of kind of making yourself feel a little better that you missed out on him, right?
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
I was gonna get him, and I was so
the pain.
close to getting him.
Yeah, and that way, if the guy goes off later, you
get partial credit.
Right, exactly. You get credit. But I will say this: this is an important thing in drafts. When a guy or gal takes the player ahead of you that you wanted, and so often players go on tilt. Then you only had one guy you really wanted, and that person gets picked, and so you go, what do I do? Now you're scrambling. A solid piece of advice for everyone out there. Whenever you're coming up towards the clock, make sure you have multiple people, more people than you have, picks in front of you that you like. And what's going to happen is inevitably through the draft, you're going to get to a spot where it's like, okay, you're 4 picks away, and there's truly only one guy that you really like a lot. You just think that guy's a cut above. The second you realize that and you're a couple picks away, get rid of that guy from your mind. Draft him. He's been drafted. Now what do you do with the rest of your draft? Because if he comes around and he's still on the board, well, then great. You're super happy. You already knew what to do. But if you don't do that, then you're going to be ill-prepared when you're on the clock, and nobody wants that.
Yeah, you don't go on tilt, but also you need to go full Mike Tyson and let the person know that you're probably going to eat their children.
Whoa. That is Mike Tyson and Mike Wright, apparently. All right, let's get into the news.
News and notes from around the league.
All right, I don't have a ton of fantasy news for you, but we do have reports out of Chiefs camp that they're optimistic Jamaal Charles will be ready for Week 1. I guess that's good.
Yeah,
Because he's a top pick.
that's good because that's what I'm counting on.
Jimmy Graham is off the pup, Mike.
Hey,
Your favorite tight end.
good for you, Jimmy.
It is incredible, I think, that he is available Week 1. But that being said,
He's talking about the rapport with Wilson now and being open and a part of the offense. And
I'm going to go on record.
you
Because
moving him up, Jason?
Nope. Well, no, I will say this. Yes, I am moving him up because I believe the stats I gave him was like 25 yards and a catch or something
Okay,
like
that's
that.
pretty
so
bad.
I will move him up. I'm guessing that he's going to finish for me in my rankings probably about tight end 20 or so, if that high. And the reason is that last year when he was healthy, when things were going great, he was, I think he, at that point when he went down to injury, was the 9th or 10th tight end in fantasy. He wasn't very consistent or reliable. Now he's coming back off of one of the most difficult injuries for players to come back off of. People come back off of knee injuries, but this is different. This is not the same type. And so let's say he gets back and he plays 16 games. First, congratulations, Jimmy. That is incredible.
Yeah.
But second, there's just no way he's better than he was last year, right? I mean, it's not rookie of the league where they're going in and, fixing up that knee and all of a sudden he's going to be
rookie of the year.
yeah, rookie of the year. Great movie.
With funky butt loving.
I could still write a story that says, Jimmy Graham gets more time with Russell Wilson. The offense is different than it was when Jimmy Graham started last year at the beginning of the season.
That would be found in the library in the fiction section.
Yeah, it wasn't.
I'm just saying.
You can write that story.
Right.
It wasn't going well when his kneecaps had never moved from their stationary position.
All right. You guys don't like Jimmy Graham. Neither do
No,
I. I don't like Jimmy Graham.
I don't dislike Jimmy Graham. I loved him in New Orleans. I dislike Jimmy Graham in that system.
Okay. That's fair. And I think he's being drafted now in that kind of a mindset, don't you think?
And he's only going to go up. I mean, with news that he's off the pup, all of a sudden people are going to be taking him as the 10th tight end off the board, thinking they got to steal.
Gross.
Yeah. Give me Antonio.
Unless they listen to the fantasy football.
Give me Antonio Gates.
Yes.
Give me Antonio Gates. All right. So what else do we got? We have Stevie Johnson. This stinks because I like Stevie Johnson.
It's official.
He had surgery yesterday and was told he will miss the entire season. So goodbye. Well, I guess speaking of Antonio Gates, I don't really think losing Stevie gives that much more to Gates. It's just another weapon that he doesn't have. So,
well, I mean, Stevie is considered a slot guy.
Yeah.
And you know what they do with Antonio Gates from time to time? Put him in the slot.
Yeah. So, all right, we are going to get into the fantasy MVP, the meat and potatoes of this show. I think I just heard an alert go off. But before we do that, I want to tell you about our good friends, Pristine Auction. This is a very special day right now because they have a Ken Stabler career collection. And this, over 450 pieces from his career collection on pristineauction.com right now. It ends on Sunday. You've seen Jason wearing his championship belt.
Of course.
But what we have in the studio right now is far more impressive.
It is
times a million.
Yeah, I was going to say.
We have the Hickok belt. This was the official belt awarded to Ken Stabler in 1976. This is the solid gold belt. There's 26 diamonds in it. You have to go.
It is official.
Go look at this on YouTube. Go look at this at pristineauction.com. This is one of the amazing pieces.
There are not a lot of these left in the world because when people got this, it's worth so much money to literally just melt it down and use the jewels. I mean, it's just not a joke. That usually these were melted down and just straight up, used for cash because they're that valuable.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And this helmet that we have here,
Say
too,
the-
is from
the,
the collection.
The helmet is unbelievable. I can almost taste the turf and the dirt just looking at this thing.
No, that's residue from the combine.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah,
from the
probably.
combine.
But they also have maybe you're thinking, well, I don't got the deepest of pockets. This isn't for me. They got things from all about Ken's career.
Yeah, 450 different lots. So definitely go check it out.
Go check it out. If you want to get in on it, sign up for a free account. Make sure you let them know when you're signing up that the fantasy footballers have sent you.
You have to look at that
So
stuff. It's really
pristineauction.com, PRISTINE auction.com.
All right, let's get into the fantasy MVP.
Who's your fantasy MVP?
That's a great question.
We're looking for the best around.
Yeah, I like that. Nice riff, Mike. Let's get right into it. What we did is we asked some of the experts from the industry to contribute their fantasy football MVP for 2016. We're going to kick it off right at the top. We're going to hear from Adam Aizer from CBS Sports and the Fantasy Football Today podcast.
Adam Aizer here from the CBS Sports Fantasy Football Today podcast. I feel like kind of a wimp for taking a quarterback as my fantasy MVP, especially a big-name quarterback, but I guess I'm just a wimp. Andrew Luck is my fantasy MVP. I think he's going to have a monster year. Luck was the number one quarterback in fantasy in 2014. He didn't forget how to play. He got hurt. The team had a bad year, but Luck is healthy, and I love the receivers this year. And more importantly, I hate the running back. They're going to throw a ton of touchdowns this year. I think Frank Gore is washed up. So big season from Andrew Luck. He's going in the 4th round in 12-team leagues. The value is not amazing on draft day because quarterbacks are going later this year, but I think he produces like he did 2 years ago. The fact that he's going right around where Russell Wilson is going just doesn't make sense to me. He's going to throw the ball over 100 more times than Russell Wilson. He's going to throw a lot more touchdowns. He still runs a good amount if you're in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues. Andrew Luck is my MVP. You get that kind of production in the 4th round, you're winning your fantasy league.
All right, what do you guys think? Andrew Luck is the fantasy MVP pick from Adam Aizer.
Yeah, I will say this. If you get the 2014 Andrew Luck in the 4th round, you will win your fantasy your championship. That's why people like Andrew Luck, because in 2014, that's right around where they were getting him in the 4th or the 5th, and then he went absolutely bananas. It's still too rich for my blood because when you're taking him in the 4th, you are essentially saying that's the season that I'm going to get when you're counting on the 40 touchdowns, the 4,000 yards from Andrew Luck. And so to count on another one of those just monster outlier career type years, I'm not going to do it with my 4th.
Well, it's hard to know whether or not that was an outlier year.
That's fair.
We
fair.
point out the fact that he had like 23 touchdowns rookie year, 23 touchdowns the next year, then 40.
Right.
And then we came into this last year where it was like, oh, well, clearly Andrew Luck he has taken that step forward. He was drafted to be a 40 touchdown type of quarterback. And so, but then last year he got injured. So we don't know for sure that it was an outlier.
Sure.
I lean towards that it was probably a slight outlier. I don't expect him to go for 40 plus touchdowns this year, but I agree. If he did where you're getting him in the draft this year as opposed to last year is, MVP,
Yep.
Potential.
I love his weapons. So
I agree. I'm going to say it right now. I'll officially side with Aizer. I think Frank Gore's washed up.
Really?
I do think Frank Gore's washed up. I think they have to find another weapon there. He'll still be used, but I don't think he's going to give you.
So kind of my Phillip Rivers defense of where they're going to have no choice but to throw the ball.
It is much more comforting to draft a guy like Breeze or Luck who will have volume in attempts in the passing game than it is to say, Russell Wilson, you're going to go and you're going to be efficient with your touchdown throws like he was last year. That's the scary part about putting Wilson up high. But
42 attempts per game.
Yeah.
That's what he averaged.
All right, let's move on.
Hello, Foot Clan. This is Brandon Marianne Lee of Pro Football Focus, Bleacher Report Radio, and Her Fantasy Football, which is also on SiriusXM on the Fantasy Channel. All right. I don't understand life right now because no one is into Devonta Freeman. It makes zero sense to me. The guy was 3rd in targets among running backs, just behind Danny Woodhead and Theo Riddick. By the way, he had 92 targets. That's right, 92. The next guy, 75. Now, He is 4th in carries last year as well. So even if he loses some carries, he's still probably going to be in the top 10. He had 265 last year. But more important than that, it's going to be more productive. They added Alex Mack to that offensive line. And supposedly at practice, he's been killing it since he got there. So I am all about him. Consider him the new Matt Forte. And Matt Forte just was amazing for fantasy owners. So I'm not quite sure why we're not all grabbing a hold of this guy. He is a great hard worker. Everybody loves him. He's someone that is always there early and late. He's even good in pass protection. There are 0 reasons to not believe in this guy. The running backs drop way off. Go for Devonta Freeman. You will not regret it.
I'm starting this one.
I say it sounds like Andy's defense over there.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to say. They love him. He's a hard worker. What you say about Tevin Coleman and, he's going to be worked in the minds of Atlanta, they do not see some inefficient rushing games at the end of the year. They see a superstar go-to slot wide receiver with the ability to perform out of the backfield. I'm telling you, Devonta Freeman, I completely buy into this argument. I love hearing the news about Mack. I hadn't seen that news. He is another piece to that offensive line. I love it all.
You have forgotten that Mack was there?
No, I knew Mack was there. I didn't hear that Mack was killing it in camp.
Oh, of course. Alex Mack is... Yeah,
that's what he does.
Yeah, he's tremendous.
But I'm just saying, you add that component to the argument. I agree with that. I think that the value's there for him. My fantasy MVP has similar arguments to why I like him, but the value for Freeman is there. So I'll back off and let you guys tear him down.
If Freeman does even near what he did last year, right? I mean, I don't think anybody expects him to replicate that because there were some of those crazy games where everything fell in perfect order for him. But if he gets near that and doesn't regress too much, he's going to be a gigantic value right now because, he's not the first running back taken. He's not the second running back taken. He's like the 8th or 9th running back taken off the board right now.
Beautiful. And in half-point and full-point leagues, that is beautiful.
Yeah, you're looking for value in fantasy football when you draft, so he's there. And I agree with almost everything Marianne Lee is saying about Freeman. And the argument against him is pretty much Mike's argument that he stinks.
Yeah, so save your breath, Mike. We're going to save – you get to speak on the next guy here.
This is Jake Ciely from RotoExperts.com and the Fantasy Sports Network. And for your 2016 Fantasy MVP – that is, me. How else are you going to win? Let's talk players, because that's what you really want to know. And I could throw out a bunch of them for you. I could throw out Sammy Coates and Jalen Strong and Travis Benjamin and Michael Floyd and Duke Johnson and Giovanni Bernard, who I think has a better year than Jeremy Hill. But if you want one specific player, hey, hit the repeat button from last year, guys. It's coming again. I haven't backed off. C.J. Anderson will be your fantasy MVP. Not only will he be an RB1 like we hoped and believed he would be last year, but he will be a top 10 running back, and you're getting him in the 3rd round, likely 4th in PPR leagues. Don't lose the faith. This is the year. C.J. Anderson, your fantasy MVP, huge value, top 10 running back. Lock it in.
This quote here is so perfect. Jake Ciely. It's all around everything of the excellent shameless self-promotion.
Ooh.
And you know how we talked about
I'm not drafting him.
I'll get into why I love C.J. Anderson. I'm just tearing down Jake Ciely.
No, I was talking about Jake Ciely.
We love Jake Ciely.
I'm just giving him a hard time.
I love the hedging. He's like, I could give you all these names just in case they're the fantasy MVP. But look, I'm all in on C.J. Anderson as well. You're getting him in the back of the 3rd. The last 9 games, once the ankle was finally healthy, he was rushing at 5.9 yards a carry.
That's absurd.
He was a monster. And you think, well, maybe that's just the season. Look at the playoff record. He had an excellent playoff run, and that's against the top teams in the league. He rushed for more than 10 yards on 21 of his 152 carries.
What if I want to arbitrarily not believe in him?
Is this a burn me once?
Yeah, that's all it is to me.
Shame on you, shame on me.
Probably.
And that's what it is. I think that
it's also the beginning of the season, and you said it was injury.
Yes.
But it's seared in my brain that when I watched him, look, we're not talking Monte Ball levels, but we're talking like I didn't see anything special in the beginning of the year, and I realized the numbers are there. So I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, like, somehow those two things are seared in where I'm just I have a little bit of a lost confidence. I like Devontae Booker. I don't that's my hesitancy, but I understand that.
Yeah,
you and Jake are on the same page.
Yeah, I can get it, but I'm telling you, the first half of the season was the bad ankle, and there's plenty of watching him in the second half where you go, oh yeah, there's C.J. Anderson.
Well, C.J. Anderson's going to be drafting right near Andy's MVP, so we'll see.
All right, let's
Andy.
move on. Matt Harmon is contributing his fantasy MVP for 2016.
Hey guys, this is Matt Harmon from NFL.com, and my fantasy football MVP this year is 49ers receiver Bruce Ellington. I think he, of all the potential late round players, has the safest floor, but also a pretty high ceiling. He's a guy that I think will get a ton of targets in the slot in Chip Kelly's offense. We saw Jordan Matthews be productive there. And if you watch some of the game film and look at his reception perception from a brief standpoint in his first few years, you see that this is a player that's ready to break out. He's the ultimate drumbeat candidate from the offseason and building steady momentum. I like him to be a super late round sleeper, a guy that you can start several weeks and that you're going to be happy that you drafted. He's my MVP this season.
All right, that's bold. It's
Yes.
always nice if you can just arbitrarily grab somebody's MVP candidate with your last pick in the draft.
Yeah, this isn't. I mean, there's different types of MVPs in fantasy football. You got the guy that finishes as the number one running back or the number one wide receiver, but then you have those guys that you took late in your draft, and don't you know it? By the end of the year, he was
Don't you know?
By
What
the end of the
is
year,
that?
He's from that
ends
town
up-
in Wisconsin we had on the show yesterday.
Oh yeah, Waka.
Yeah, yep.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
No, the those players that you grab at the end of the draft that end up being a startable, that wide receiver 2 or a flex week in, week out, all of a sudden it gives your entire roster flexibility for trades through the year. It buys you victories, and so Harmon is giving us a gold nugget
One
here
of
at
those
the end of our
names.
drafts.
Mike, I mean, let me ask you this. Do you buy in? I mean, you've got a guy who hasn't scored a touchdown since 2014. He's got like 19 total catches in his career. All the potential in the world at 24 years old in the Chip Kelly offense. But let me just ask you plainly, do you agree with that?
I can buy in. Part of it I'll agree is, or I will concede, is that Matt Harmon knows wide receivers. He breaks these down. I believe in his reception perception method. And when he talks about a guy beating coverage, eventually, if a player is very successful at beating coverage, he's going to get the ball. And then you toss in the success of Jordan Matthews in the slot for Chip Kelly last year, and the high volume of passing. The plays are going to be there. The offense will be there. Even if they have a terrible defense, great. They have to throw the ball even more.
Does the quarterback situation
That's
make
exactly
a
what I was
difference?
going to ask. If it's Kaepernick or it's Gabbert, does it matter to you?
It does not matter to me.
It matters to me. I feel like Gabbert will be able to get him the ball better than
Yeah, I
Kaepernick.
would say I prefer it to be Gabbert, but I think that even Kaepernick can get it done.
All right, Bruce Ellington. I think he's going in the 14th round. So if you want to take a shot on him, backed by Matt Harmon himself,
yeah,
you can do that. So here's let's move on to Chris Harris.
Hey guys, this is Chris Harris from Harris Football. I guess fantasy MVP can mean a few different things, like the guy who actually winds up scoring the most relative points above replacement level. I think in a standard league, I would predict that's Adrian Peterson. I saw nothing in his film to indicate a slowdown last year. I'm willing to buy one more year. In a PPR league, I'd probably say Antonio Brown. But then there's the value part of the equation, the sort of the biggest bang for your draft buck. I'll take a wild swing on another old guy, Steve Smith. No clue if he can come back from a double torn Achilles, but if he's the same guy, he will come at a huge discount and was still mighty good before he got hurt last year. Thanks, guys.
All right, Steve Smith. Didn't he just come off the pup?
Did he? I had not seen that news. You can verify that real quick.
Yeah, I might be wrong.
So, and Harris he's not fibbing here between week 1 and 8 when Steve Smith had a working Achilles. He was the wide receiver 11. Here's old man Smith just putting up wide receiver 1 numbers again. The problem for me is not Steve Smith at all. It's just where you have to take him. It's very late, but you're in the back of the 10th round. But this is right around guys like Willie Snead, Kamar Aiken, Sammy Coates, guys that I think have huge upside in taking a flyer there, and they all have functional Achilles, which I look for in
I think
a
everyone
player.
would agree that if Steve Smith comes back healthy, he is more valuable than those 3 guys you named. So the
Yes.
question is, do you believe he can come back healthy?
So the report, he's not off the pup. John Harbaugh came out and said he is expected to be ready by week 1.
Yes.
That is the report. So he'll be off the pup, expected to be ready by week 1. I'm sure he'll be eased into playing, on coming back from the double rupture. Again, another low, I think it's a low-cost flyer if you believe he's going to be back. If the news starts trending in the right direction before, then you're in good shape.
Yeah, it's like if Steve Smith is healthy, then he will be a monster value.
You got two. I mean, he mentioned two old people that were performing at a high level last year, and I really like his pick of Adrian Peterson. He's my number 1 running back this year in standard and in half-point PPR. But with Steve Smith, the way he went out at 37 with a double ruptured Achilles, I'm not buying Steve Smith this year.
All right, who's the next guy on our list?
So the next guy, a good friend, we have spent many moments.
The late round QB himself.
With J.J. Zachariason, editor-in-chief of Number Fire and host of Live in the Stream.
Sometimes the editor-in-chief of
FanDuel. Depending on
That's right. That's right. So let's hear from JJ and his MVP.
He's not necessarily the MVP of fantasy football, but he's a huge, huge value pick, and that's Marvin Jones. Players over the last 3 years with better touchdowns per target rates than Marvin Jones include Rob Gronkowski, Tyler Eifert, Allen Robinson, Des Bryant, and Julius Thomas. That's it. Those are the only players who have been better red zone threats on a per-target basis. Golden Tate's not a traditional red zone threat, as he scored 6 times last year, with 4 of those coming on design plays from 1 or 2 yards out. Detroit's been one of the most pass-heavy teams with non-injury-prone Matthew Stafford under center, which should easily allow Jones to see well over 100 targets. So you have volume, you have opportunity to be a deep and intermediate threat without Calvin Johnson, and you have opportunity to be a huge red zone threat. He may not be the MVP of fantasy football, but Marvin Jones is certainly a huge, huge bargain at wide receiver 40.
All right, well, I buy in. I mean,
Yeah.
two days ago, I moved Marvin Jones up in my rankings. I moved him from the mid-60s receptions to up near 80, right under 80. If Eric Ebron has prolonged problems with his ankle, I like him even more. Marvin Jones as being that red zone threat with no Calvin Johnson. Going in the 9th round, give me Marvin Jones over a lot of different guys going ahead of him.
In camp, he received 50% of the targets the other day from Stafford in their scrimmage against another team. That's a huge volume. So you know that they're developing the trust right now. I think this is a great, this is why we do shows like this, right? Is we haven't talked a whole lot about Marvin Jones recently, and this is another, golden nugget where you can say, hey, here's another guy that presents a great value who could be good when you get in
Could be
great, and he's in that portion of the draft where it's like, it's not a bunch of guys I just absolutely love around him.
We brought it up earlier in the offseason. Detroit, they had a very successful end of the season, but they are implementing a new system. The Jim Bob Cooter offense was not fully implemented as he took over midseason. Now it's a new offense. You don't have that built-in system that Golden Tate and Matthew Stafford were working on together. You do have the rapport between them. But Tate is not a prototypical number 1. Everybody knows that. He's a yards after catch guy. He's got great hands. He finds a way to get open when you need a big play. But Marvin Jones has at least some shoes to step into there of Calvin Johnson, and Matthew Stafford has the arm strength to get the ball to him downfield, and Jones can make big plays. So I love the value of Marvin Jones almost more than I do the player.
Right. Hey, that's fair. But we talk about it sometimes. An opportunity is greater than the player as a whole.
All right, let's go ahead. Let's go to Pat Mayo now.
When people think about the fantasy MVP, they're thinking about the highest score at whatever position. So let's say someone I love, like Mike Evans. He could be the number 1 receiver this year. He's going to see all of his team's targets. He should positively regress from the 3 touchdowns he scored last season. And if Jameis takes another step, he's going to be fine. But people are taking Mike Evans in the first 15 picks. I mean, he's going to be the fantasy MVP. Maybe he's your second-round pick. Turns out to be your first-round pick. That's not the ultimate value that you want. Now, obviously, I don't know what's going to happen on the waiver wire all season long. There's going to be a great pickup, and that person will probably be the fantasy MVP. But in drafts, right now, Antonio Gates is going way too late. He's going in the 11th, 12th, 13th round, and what he affords you is the luxury to wait on tight end. So while guys are taking Gronk and Jordan Reed and even Delaney Walker, Ladarius Green, and Kobe Fleener in all the middle rounds, what you can do is continue to build your core of receivers and running backs, pad that depth, and make sure that you can have some impact guys at those positions, because Antonio Gates, he's going to be fine, and he's going to be a top 5 tight end. So make sure to get him on your team.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I buy into that. I
Yes.
tried to move over the part where Pat Mayo said he positively regressed, which we had given Jason such a hard time about the fact that you can't say positive regression. But
I stand by it.
You sure can. You sure can.
he's got his positive regression crew now.
Yep.
With Pat Mayo involved. Look, I said this. I brought this up on the Chris Harris show this morning when we were talking about Antonio Gates. If you look, I think I compared him to Tim Duncan, right?
Yes,
People
yes.
wanted to stop believing in the Spurs and Tim Duncan. You're too old. You're too old. Just look at the numbers and look at the impact and look at the rapport between him and Rivers. The last 27 games played by Rob Gronkowski has 21 touchdowns. The last 27 games played by Antonio Gates, he has 17. Now, that's not Gronk, but Gronk's going in the first or second, and Gates is going in the middle of the 11th round. So I buy in completely. He's going to solidify teams. He's going to give you big weeks. I mean, what's not to like about Antonio Gates in the 11th round?
Yeah, I've been pushing old man Gates all offseason. Love him on.
No, you have. You had him highest ranked earlier.
On a per game basis, he was averaging 5 receptions a game. That puts him third for the tight end position. You know he can get it done. We talked a little bit about the Stevie Johnson, the loss for San Diego, where I think that bumps up Antonio Gates. Not a huge amount, but I think that certainly gives him a little bit more targets, maybe some more time in the slot where he has been dominant, especially for scoring touchdowns. I see no reason why, especially if you're going to wait at least a little bit on your tight end, wait for Antonio Gates in the middle of the 11th round is absolutely ludicrous to me.
Anything to add, Jason?
Positive regression.
Positive regression. No, we love Gates. He's a fantasy footballer favorite this year.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and go to another Fantasy Sports Network colleague.
I'm going to prep everyone for this.
What, because it's a hot take?
Put on your flame retardant outfits.
Buckle up.
Because our good friend Nando's about to bring the fire.
All right, Nando Di Fino from the Fantasy Sports Network, bringing the fire.
Hello, everybody. It's your old friend Nando Di Fino from the Fantasy Sports Network. Yay! I got a fantasy MVP. His name is Robert Griffin III. And now this is like the 5th time I've recorded this, and I'm almost talking myself into Terrelle Pryor as my fantasy MVP. So I would like to lobby for co-fantasy MVPs.
I think we'll let you.
I think Robert Griffin III is going to have Corey Coleman, who I like. I don't want to overhype him, but I like him. He's going to have Gary Barnidge, who's nice and steady. He's going to have Duke Johnson catching 60 passes, and he's going to have Terrelle Pryor. And I think the two are tied together. The performance of Terrelle Pryor made it. And let's face it, I haven't brought up Josh Gordon yet, who's going to be back in Week 5. Most likely. But Terrelle Pryor, I think, is going to catch a ton of passes, is going to be an important weapon in this offense. He can catch 800 yards, maybe 6 or 7 touchdowns. We've seen quarterbacks turn into wide receivers before with a lot of success. I don't know why everyone's counting out Terrelle Pryor. He was hurt. I don't think it was really an athletic issue. So that's my guy. RG3 and Terrelle Pryor, my guys. Thank you for listening. I love you all.
Bye. They are all yours, Nando. They're your guys. You can pump up the Browns.
Hey,
what do you guys think?
I was on Terrelle Pryor.
You certainly were.
I've been on him since way long ago. I got flack from Andy over here even a couple weeks ago.
You are a brother in arms now. Are you backing down?
No, I'm not backing down.
Yeah.
I still like Terrelle Pryor. But if he's going to say that the fantasy MVP is RG3, man, that's tough. That's tough. There is a world in which that happens if RG3's knee is healthy and he is a running quarterback and he leads the league in rushing yards.
If he leads the league in rushing yards, he's out by Week 4.
Right.
He can't do that.
That's kind of the paradox of the way that he needs to play in order to perform for fantasy is a way that will not continue to hold up. And so there is a problem there. I can get behind Terrelle Pryor because when Robert Griffin III goes out in Week 4, Josh McCown's going to bomb him some great passes. but I don't like
Bomb him some great
I don't like
passes.
the combo with RG3. I hope I'm wrong here, just because I think it would be exciting for the league to have RG3 relevant again. Just don't think it's going to happen.
Why I can buy into this for Robert Griffin is the success that we have seen on what I would say, back Griffin's rookie year, I wouldn't really consider that a great offense, what he was put into and he was producing. I think he was the reason that the offense was so great, and he's free. If you want to take late round quarterback take it to the limit with Robert Griffin III, and he pans out for you, the rest of your team will be so loaded with depth that your team could be an absolute juggernaut. I mean, you could even sustain multiple injuries and still survive if you wait until Robert Griffin, who will probably sustain multiple injuries himself.
What year is it?
2016. What year? What year is it?
Robert Griffin got you excited about his play in 2012.
Yeah.
Robert Griffin III. I'm going to be the voice of reason here. I don't think there's any chance that Robert Griffin III is your fantasy MVP. Not only does he have to do something he hasn't been able to do, he's been cut from the Redskins that they don't believe he can do. He's got to do it at a destination that just seems plagued with inefficient offense, with the problems of Josh Gordon, with a rookie wide receiver, with a change in the whole, coaching staff again. No way. I mean, give me 31 other quarterbacks. I mean, everyone you can say, if they pan out, you have lots of depth. I'm just not going to buy into the RG3. I'm happy to say Terrelle Pryor is going to give you value because he's running with the twos now. He's always been an athletic.
He's running as
the number 2 with the ones. He's always been an athletic freak. He has great speed, and the transition to wide receiver. Look, if he's there on the depth chart, fine. I'm not going to buy into Robert Griffin III.
Yeah,
You can't make me.
He's our consensus 27 quarterback.
Yeah, and that's too high.
Well,
all right.
I'll say 27 is higher than 31 or 32.
Consensus. Yeah, you guys are pulling him up.
You have him at 29.
All right. Thank goodness. All right. Hey, we're going to give you our fantasy MVPs in just a minute. We're going to finish this out with 4 for 4. It's John Paulsen. Maybe.
Hi, it's John Paulsen for 4for4.com. I'm here to announce my fantasy MVP. I'm not sure he's going to be an MVP, but I'm always on the lookout for tight end value. 2013, it was Jordan Cameron who emerged from the later rounds to post top 5, top 6 numbers. 2014, it was Travis Kelce. 2015, Tyler Eifert was going in the 9th or 10th round. This year, I think it's Dwayne Allen's turn with Kobe Fleener out of the way. Allen has the tight end position to himself there in Indianapolis. It's a tight end friendly offense under Rob Chudzinski. They've accounted for 21% of the targets, 20% of the yards, and 31% of the touchdowns over the last 3 years. The tight end position. So I think that Allen will have a big role, especially in the red zone where you can catch double-digit touchdowns. Chudzinski was there with Jordan Cameron's breakout year in 2013. He also coached Greg Olsen, his best season to date prior to that in Carolina. And he, before that, even in Cleveland, he was there for Kellen Winslow's Pro Bowl season in 2007 when he had 82 catches for 1,100 yards. So things are really setting up nicely for Allen. He just needs to stay healthy. He's a little bit injury prone, so I always back him up if I can with Zach Miller out of Chicago, who came on real strong down the stretch with Martellus Bennett sideline. So that's my fantasy MVP.
I love it.
You love it?
I love it. I think that the Paulsen has made a very strong argument to me with the numbers, especially referencing what Chudzinski has done for the tight end position. Dwayne Allen scored 8 touchdowns in 2014 on very limited work. I don't see a world where Dwayne Allen becomes, a huge yardage type of a guy. But if he's Tyler Eifert from last year in the 60s and he's getting you double-digit touchdowns, I see that as a probable thing that could happen for Dwayne Allen.
He's certainly a value. We've talked on this before, but it is absolute lunacy that Dwayne Allen last year, when Kobe Fleener was there, was being drafted ahead of where Dwayne Allen is being drafted this year. Now that Dwayne Allen is the guy and is the only tight end target in town for a tight end heavy team, his value in the draft is there, and where he's going, I really like. I would be happy to take him without question.
There's a reason why that's happening, though. That's not happening just.
It's happening because Andrew Luck was injured half the year last year, and we have this recency bias that says, I mean, I've said it, the Colts are all being undervalued. That's the reason Andrew Luck is being drafted behind where he was drafted last year. That's the reason T.Y. Hilton is being drafted behind where he was drafted last year. It's because the Colts stunk last year.
And I'll buy into part of that. That's not the only reason. He hasn't played 16 games since 2012.
That's fair.
He is injury prone, and he did play 13 and score 1 touchdown last year. So there's a reason why. I mean, he did not perform on the draft value last year, and yes, you can attribute 100% if you want to Andrew Luck being out, and that's fine.
Will.
And you can. That's fine. I'm just saying there is a reason. If you stack up injury-prone season on injury-prone season, eventually somebody like Mike will stop drafting Arian Foster, which is ridiculous.
I was just going to say, Arian Foster?
Yeah, but
he beat you to it, Mike.
Yeah,
so
he did.
Yeah, preemptive strike. All right. Hey, first, before we give you our fantasy MVPs, I want to thank every single one of those experts that contributed their fantasy MVP pick. We're going to post all their Twitter information, where you can find them. We're going to put out an article with the fantasy MVP, all these names, so you can reference it on our website, thefantasyfootballers.com. But a special thanks to every single one of the experts that contributed. We really appreciate you taking the time to send us over your picks. Now it's time to get into it. We're going to give you our fantasy MVPs for 2016. Who wants to start?
Mike.
I guess I do.
I guess Mike wants to start.
All right. This is a player who I have loved. My love for him has grown, and he was in fact my fantasy MVP back when we did our election special.
Is there a poster of him above your bed?
Not yet. It's in the mail.
Okay.
It's in the mail, and I don't say that because I've had this take forever, because we like to stay water and change our takes with new information. The funniest part about Mark Ingram, my fantasy MVP, is he's going even later than when I talked about him in March. He's going at the top of the 3rd round between weeks 1 and 13. He was the running back 4. He was a top 4 fantasy running back because in 12 games he gave you almost 800 yards on the ground, 6 touchdowns, and it was the targets that changed everything for Mark Ingram's fantasy output. 60 targets turned into 50 catches, which, by the way, he had 464 yards after the catch in the 12 games, which put him 7th for running backs. So that's pretty dominant. 484 yards after contact, that puts him 14th. The last 3 years, he's been a very, very solid runner. He's on one of the best offenses in the entire league. And I think in the third round, he's now a value pick to me. I love starting my drafts going wide receiver, if I think I can get Mark Ingram at the top of the 3rd.
That's very fair. Let's do this a little differently. Give me one reason why he isn't your MVP. Like he could end up not being your MVP.
Injury.
Just injury?
Just injury.
So you're not worried about anything with workload?
Nope.
Okay. All right. That's great. When I went to Universal Studios with my wife this past summer for our anniversary, I went in that Walking Dead experience they just added where you enter and then I guess I didn't really realize. I thought this was going to be a tour of set.
Andy thought he was going to the bathroom.
Yeah, and so instead I'm drawn into this experience of zombies leaping out at me. I don't know where to go.
You are in the Walking Dead.
It's so dark that I don't know which door is the right door, and I'm going to be killed. I liken that experience to me picking my fantasy MVP right here.
Ringing endorsement.
It was as scary for me to do it. But look, at the end of the day, that should speak to the confidence, not against it, because even though it was very scary for me to do as I was writing this down.
You did it anyways.
I did it anyways because I really believe it. I really believe it. My fantasy MVP for 2016 is Latavius Murray.
I love it.
It's Latavius Murray. Latavius Murray is going at the 11th pick of the 3rd round, 311.
He was a beautiful disaster last year.
Yeah, well, no, he was not. But this is not about last year.
That was a
311 reference.
What? No.
But he wasn't a disaster. A beautiful disaster? I don't know. Maybe that does describe him. But look, I'm not making this argument about last year when he had 266 carries, over 1,000 yards, and 6 touchdowns. I'm not making it about last year when he had 616 yards after the catch, which was 5th best in the league. I'm making it about this year. He is extremely durable. He played every game last year. He's going to do it again this year. Every report out of camp says that Latavius Murray is cruising through as that RB1. And there is, I guess, the fear of DeAndre Washington, the fact that Latavius Murray didn't give you the flash last year that you hoped for. it's driven his draft value down. If Latavius Murray was a second-round pick right now, he's not my fantasy MVP. He's basically a fourth-round pick. Yeah. He's almost going in the fourth round. And now you go and you give him Pro Football Focus's second-best offensive line, a team that wants to run the ball, a guy who dominated when he was put in a position to run against less than 8 in the box with Derek Carr and Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree, and that, when he was running against dime formation, he was the best in the league. I just like what Latavius Murray gives you as literally a workhorse back. And so you talk about how you like your draft setting up with Mark Ingram in the third round as your first. Look, give me Latavius as my RB2. I think he's a guaranteed RB1 this year. I really do. I think at the end of the year, when the numbers pan out, he's going to be in that top 12. And so, to me, at the value level, he's my fantasy MVP.
Murray has me all mixed up.
Okay, all right.
I'm just happy.
He's the color of my energy. All right.
I'm just happy to see you.
I know.
Welcome,
all right.
Welcome.
Yeah,
to the show.
I know. You like Latavius Murray, Jason. But
all right. So my fantasy MVP, I'm going to go ahead and start and say that both of your guys present better draft day values than my guy, because my guy's going to have to pretty much cost you your first-round pick.
That sounds like an admission of ours are better.
No, incorrect. I'm actually
what do you think, Andy?
Yeah, no, I heard that.
I will go
Thank
ahead
you, Jason.
and guarantee that my guy finishes ahead of your guy, and he's at the exact same position. So I'm going to take mine as the fantasy MVP. My guy is Lamar Miller. And the reason I wanted to make him my fantasy MVP, well,
because he's on your roster?
There are many. Actually, that is part of the reason, not because he's on my roster, but because I have made the personal decision. I had Mark Ingram on my team, Mike's fantasy MVP, and I had Lamar Miller. I had to choose, who am I going to keep? I kept Lamar Miller because I believe it. And so, yeah, it's not because he's on my team that I'm doing this, but it is because I believe and I'm doing, you put your money where your mouth is. And so let me give you a couple of reasons why I am confident in – I'm not confident in a lot of the starters. I'm not confident in Todd Gurley, especially after watching that first Hard Knocks. Goodness gracious.
That didn't – by the way, I thought he looked great.
Oh, no. Todd Gurley looked great. I agree. Todd Gurley's amazing.
I
just think
quarterback.
the Rams are a mess. And
if
we're not
you're a
gonna
Rams fan, please don't watch the show after the show from yesterday. Jason may have been slightly hyperbolic, although – some Rams fans have said quite accurate.
Yeah, so, all right, let me get back to Lamar Miller. Lamar Miller last year in PPR was the number 5 running back, and the knock on Lamar Miller has always been, not on him, but that he doesn't get the ball. He doesn't have the opportunity. And so there are questions, right? Does he really want that? There were reports that he turned down more money elsewhere to go to Houston. Why would he do that? I watched an interview last night about Lamar Miller when he was asked that question, and he said it's because of how Houston uses the running back. He is, sometimes guys get paid, and you go, oh, now I worry he's not going to. His whole motivation of going there was because he wanted to do something special on the field and help his team win. He has right now 12 games in his career where he has more than 15 carries. Because sometimes you go, okay, look at Andre Ellington a couple years ago. Great, efficient runner. And he's going to get more volume. So when he gets more volume, he's just going to be fantastic. But that didn't work out. Sometimes guys can't handle volume. And that might be your fear with Lamar Miller is he gets the volume and he's not going to do it.
That's my fear.
Well, let me dissuade that fear. Lamar Miller, you are right, has 45 games where he has under 15 carries. In fact, in those games, he's averaged 8.9 carries. That's been the knock. But he also has 12 games where he has over 15 carries. In those games, he averages 18-plus carries a game. And in those games, he has been phenomenal. He's averaged 15 fantasy points a game in those games, which last year would have made him the number 3 running back at that workload. That being said, his workload should be much higher than that.
Do you run out of breath talking about Lamar Miller?
He's running out of saliva, too.
His workload should be higher than that. We're talking if he gets the same level of carries that Alfred Blue got, his carries will be higher. But he's going to get in between Alfred Blue and Arian Foster. And then just keep in mind a couple of these things. Last year and in his career, he's been playing twice a year against the New England Patriots, against the Buffalo Bills, against the Jets and their great run defense. Now he's got 2 games a year where he's playing against the Indianapolis Colts run defense, the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, the Tennessee Titans run defense. Keel! You're darn right, Keel! And so, look, I believe that Lamar Miller is safe this year, but I also think his ceiling is through the roof. And so I'm a little afraid of some of these first-round running backs. I don't like a lot of the first-round running backs. I am confident with Lamar Miller. He is my fantasy
He got
MVP.
way more time than we got, Mike.
Yeah, I was going to say.
His volume was progressively increasing.
I feel like the loud volume and the length of speaking has coerced me. I love it.
Just
man.
the key off.
I love Jason's points here. Lamar Miller is a guy who I am rising on even more.
Yeah, the Texans ran 150 more plays than the Dolphins last year.
I have no question that he'll get more. I just want to know if he'll be efficient with it. He's never had over 200 carries. I like that he's durable. I don't think he's ever missed a game due to injury. There's a lot of – look, he's a great pick. The value part of it, we'll see.
All
if
right.
he's the number one, he's a value still where you're drafting him.
Well, and
if he's the number 1, 2 guy.
I concede. He's not the best value because you got to take a first-round pick. But for me, I'm risk-averse. I feel like he's safe.
I love it, and you still get the upside built in. So that does it for the Fantasy MVP episode. Thank you for tuning in. We had a lot of fun putting this one together for you. Make sure that you check out our Ultimate Draft Kit as you get ready for these drafts coming up. It's a great way to see all of our projections and see a bunch of player profiles. We have a ton of things we're adding to that, and so you can check that out at ultimatedraftkit.com. Again, thanks to all the experts.
Joker away.
Yeah, keep the Joker away. It's best for your health to go check the Ultimate Draft Kit out.
And don't forget to check out this Ken Stabler collection.
Yeah, on pristineauction.com. And as always, we want to thank our studio sponsor, Fantasy Jocks. If you need a draft board, trophies, rings, those things, check them out, fantasyjocks.com. Use the promo code BALLERS. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow. Peace.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.